now.
Hello and welcome to the September 7th SIG AWS meeting. Our first agenda item is my agenda item, which is I have started a Google Doc that is temporarily or possibly permanently serving as an active and living backlog for action items for the SIG. The reason for this is because I've been getting several pings, emails, carrier pigeons from various folks in open source, and I just felt that it would be prudent to go through and start to consolidate all these so that myself and other folks could pick them off as needed. Most of these are like clerical chores that we just need to do to like be good open source citizens, but some of them are a little bit broader in scope, such as defining a charter for the SIG and just reviewing our calendar invites and our Google Docs and all that kind of stuff as well. So anyway, if folks have items that they think we should work on, feel free to add them. If folks want to contribute and pick any of those items off, feel free to go in and assign yourself and let us know that you're working on them. The Google Doc is linked in the agenda minutes. And that's all that I have there, unless anybody has any questions.
I will sync with you afterwards, Chris, because I am backfilling all our videos, the ones that I have. I'm missing a couple, and I don't know if anyone else has some for some other random reason, but if anyone other than Chris has any videos, please do reach out to me. I have almost all of them. I'm just missing a couple, and apparently we're supposed to upload them in order, otherwise people get unhappy.
Are we uploading them using the same date syntax that SIG cluster lifecycle uses?
I am uploading them using the correct or documented date syntax. I don't know what what's in cluster lifecycle is, which is year, month, day, no hyphens. Capital K on Kubernetes. SIG name is unclear, but I'm doing lowercase.
Okay, that has been my syntax as well. Anyway, I think that might solve the order which we upload them problem, or do we actually really need to go in and upload them like sequentially?
I think we're supposed to, because otherwise people get, the many subscribers to the channel will get pinged about videos out of order, and it will be surprising and annoying.
How many subscribers do we currently have?
I'm sure we have millions.
Okay. Okay, I know I have a couple here on this computer, so afterwards I can either upload them myself or send them your way, Justin.
That would be great. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, Nisha here. I went ahead and put your name and Justin's name and my name across certain action items. I apologize if I was proactive there, but one of the things I wanted to ask is on the buttoning up for the sub-project process. I have pretty much cleared the process for the current 4 sub-projects, and I'm adding 2 new sub-projects, the CSI driver and the Cluster API. Is there something that you think is missing for the existing 4 sub-projects?
I don't think so. Mostly that was just my way of saying, I think it was, I want to say Aaron or George or somebody pinged me and said, hey, there's like some outstanding PRs that need some attention. And I knew it involved sub-projects. So that was pretty much all that action item represented.
Okay, yeah, Aaron had mentioned that during the community call. I already closed the PR for the existing ones, and I'll follow up on the other 2 and close them this week.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and I also want to take the action item on the charter. I'll share the charter with you and Justin next week, and then we can open it up for everybody else on the forum in the next meeting.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so just to play that back, you've been working on a charter. The 3 of us are just going to give it a quick once over, and then we're going to send it out to the broader SIG for everybody to look at and contribute?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That will be helpful.
Okay. That's it from me.
Okay, I'm going to type some of this up in the notes, which means I'm going to mute my microphone, which is a bit of a commitment. So Justin, if you want to ask folks if there's anything else we should talk about, feel free to go for that.
I will do that. I don't know if anyone else has anything they would like to talk about. It is an unusually light agenda today. So if people have anything AWS related, this would be a great time. I'm trying to think whether anything else is currently active. I think the only 2 things that are currently sort of long boiling topics are whether whether master nodes should by default be included in load balancers, and sort of the various options for that to give people the choice, and what we do about instances that are in the stopped state as opposed to the terminated state, whether they should be deleted in Kubernetes. But there are GitHub, if anyone is interested in those, I will try to, like, you can search the GitHub issues, and there are active discussions going on both of them in the Kubernetes repo. Unless anyone wants to say anything here. Otherwise, it looks like a very, everyone wants to get their weekend started very early, I guess.
Yes.
So Justin, I had one question to ask about the encryption provider. There was a request from a customer around an additional feature whereby if the master key is not essentially, they don't want to essentially use master keys provided by a KMS provider, or rather the KEC, and they want to provide the master key for the secrets to be encrypted with. Adding that feature into the encryption provider was a request. I wanted to ask people if there are other customers with a similar use case as we start working on that code base and that feature. And have you heard that from Google or like anybody else?
I don't know on the Google side whether we've heard that. If it will obviously be worth checking whether the Google encryption provider supports a comparable flag. I guess this would be a flag, right? But
yeah,
it doesn't sound like a terribly hard feature to add, and I think it would be very, very valuable to people that, I guess, want to bring their own key. I'm not entirely sure why you would do that, but it doesn't seem unreasonable to do.
Okay. Yeah, this is only for certain financial companies or tax companies that want to do something like that because of the security and the other compliance reasons.
Yeah, I think the gotcha is I don't think they can ever. I don't think, for example, we have a way to do key rotation away, for example, so they can't like, you know, anyway. If they want to do that for their own like compliance reasons, that sounds like a reasonable feature to add, not terribly difficult. I can imagine there are other features coming in terms of like key rotation or things like that, but yeah, those which will be trickier. But this particular feature sounds like a good one to add. And I'm trying to get like CI set up on that repo and a GCR or ECR or some form of Docker distribution, Docker image distribution in place.
An update on that, we're setting up Prow internally, and we'll integrate AWS fully for each of the sub-projects. And I'll give you access to that as one of the maintainers for it. So if you don't mind, if we can hook up everything in AWS to run Prow, that would be awesome. At least for the sig-aws projects.
I will take a look. Prow is a complicated beast, but I will do my best.
Okay, I mean, we can discuss this offline, but we're just setting up a simple Prow environment with AWS, and then we'll add the configs with certain folks' names, and then hook up all the sub-projects, because that was a specific ask from some of the other maintainers as well.
Awesome.
Cool.
I can give a really quick update on the cluster API AWS. We don't know what it's called yet, work. I think most people are calling it the implementer, which I'm sure there'll be another email sent out about picking out the right word to use there. Anyway, one of the big things that we're looking at now is how we handle resource mutation in AWS via the cluster API controllers. It looks like there's a lot of talk around defining some sort of new level of grouping resources together. A resource set might be a good temporary word to use there, where one or more resources in Amazon are idempotently mutated and either created in one fell swoop to the satisfaction of the program or failed halfway through and then undone along the way. So that's sort of like where the engineering side of things is focused right now, is figuring out the right way to solve that problem. And then as far as the project in general, we're still very much in the submit a markdown design phase of things, so not too much code is being written right now, but this is very relevant to this SIG, as we are an owner, and it's Kubernetes and Amazon. So, and again, if anybody has any questions or wants to get involved with that effort, there's open source calls and docs and everything else along the way.
That's great. And for people that don't know, I just clarified the sort of the goal here is that you'll be able to program or create AWS instances directly inside Kubernetes via the cluster API, right? Which is machine deployments, machine sets, and machines.
Yeah. So scaling your cluster is now an exercise of editing an object in Kubernetes and not having to care about how those instances are scaled.
I guess something that might be interesting to discuss here, if there's nothing else, is there was a lively discussion which didn't have a lot of input, but maybe this group has a lot of input on it, which is whether we should use CloudFormation to do that sort of resource set concept where we create a set of resources. So the two alternative suggestions are that either we can directly call the API and try to use like journaling, or some of the AWS API calls support idempotency tokens, but basically implement it ourselves, the resource set concept. And then I think Ilya suggested an alternative might be to create a CloudFormation set of manifest. I don't know what the word is. A CloudFormation thing for each resource set, and just hand it off to CloudFormation, which basically does a lot of that idempotency or effective idempotency for you. And I believe one of the ALB cloud providers did something similar. Sorry, one of the ALB ingress controllers did something similar, where they used CloudFormation, the CoreOS Ticketmaster one. So I don't know if, no, it didn't. Was it the other one?
That was the Zalando one.
The Zalando one did it. Okay. So I don't know if anyone has any experience with programmatically driving CloudFormation in this way that they want to share, but that is a sort of topic of discussion. It's likely that I think both will happen, CloudFormation and API access, but we'll see.
Yes, which natural segue into another update, which is picking out another word for the project, and it looks like variance is winning. So I think we could start to safely use that word, which would mean that we would then have two variants of deploying Kubernetes and Amazon, where the variants are different avenues in which we mutate resources that Justin just described.
So like a CloudFormation variant and an API variant. And I think there would likely be other permutations of the variants for like COPS and EKS and Kubicorn and cluster cuddle, I guess.
There would be variants.
Let's just keep it a variance, but yes, the set of variants would be fairly large and might include permutations, I think.
Which is really good, and I think folks who are running Kubernetes on Amazon are going to appreciate that.
And the other one is auto-scaling groups versus whether a machine set, which is a set of machines, is materialized as an auto-scaling group, whether it's materialized as n independent AWS instances. In other words, whether we push that behavior down to the AWS API or we keep it in Kubernetes.
Yes.
Another variant.
Wouldn't using auto-scaling groups kind of like make the different implementations like work differently and like?
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think that's the basis of the debate is, on the one hand, AWS has auto-scaling groups which work and are fairly easy to use and have the advantage that they sort of self-recover. So if you turn off all your machines, they come back. But on the other hand, then the different implementation, an auto-scaling group machine set would almost definitely behave differently from a pure Kubernetes machine set implementation. So that is the why there are two flavors, I guess, or potentially two flavors there.
I have a comment on this. So from previous experience in larger clusters, one of the issues is that if you try to set up nodes using the EC2 API kind of one at a time, in other words, without an auto-scaling group, you're going to run into API limits in terms of how fast you can, like a typical customer is going to run into limits with how fast they can actually start instances. And if you run with an ASG, and I'm not quite sure what the tipping point is, but running with like any cluster of size, you're almost going to have to use an ASG to get the cluster actually up and down within a reasonable period of time. So I think that's probably gonna, my feeling is that probably tilts the answer. And then if you're actually doing like any kind of scaling operations up and down, you're gonna continue to run into the same thing. So you can turn the knob on the ASG to get the cluster size to go up and down pretty efficiently, but as soon as you start trying to like manage all the nodes individually, it's a pretty big hassle. You effectively end up kind of almost re-implementing a bunch of the ASG stuff. So.
Hey, so another side note here is this is Ishwar from AWS. So one of my strong recommendation here is look at CloudFormation a lot more in detail, right? Because if you go the API route, right, you would have to re-implement a lot of stuff that CloudFormation does, right? For example, when issues happen, you got to roll back, you got to keep state, right? You got to deal with eventual consistency, you got to keep polling. All of that stuff comes into the picture when you use API variant, right? So like you might have a simpler approach if you use CloudFormation rather than the API version. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is great feedback. I think this is sort of the discussion, which I think it's on Mondays. Is that right, Chris? That the meeting is normally. You're muted there, so I missed it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I think it's Mondays. We did it on Tuesday last week because Labor Day. But yeah, I think it might be prudent for like me or you, Justin, or whoever happens to be on both calls in a week to kind of help drive this conversation between the two groups, because a lot of the points that like for instance the one that Esprod just made really would have changed the discussion on the call on Monday if we would have had that information.
Agreed, and it is open source, so I suspect there will be multiple implementations, but if there is one that is easier and will go faster, then we should definitely make sure we at least cover it and encourage that route.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've always kind of done a good job at as a SIG is having good, documentation on all of the different avenues of doing something. I remember we, like a couple of months ago, wrote up all the different ways to even deploy Kubernetes on Amazon. So it might be prudent for us to go through and come up and say, okay, out of all of the different ways you could use the cluster API, this is the one that, seems to be working the most efficiently.
Okay, so what is the forum for this discussion? You said it's on Mondays?
Yes, so it's mostly under SIG cluster lifecycle because that's where the cluster API project started. But on Mondays, there's an Amazon specific cluster API implementation call that's sort of like an office hours or a working group under the working group where we just talk about code and these sort of technical concerns like we're talking about now.
Okay, I'll join in the next call.
I can put a link in the doc, but I'm going to mute while I type so I don't disturb you guys on the keyboard.
That's great. I don't know if anyone else has anything else that they've added or would like to discuss. Otherwise, I guess we can call it. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.